Okay. Is this on? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dan Millison. I work part-time as a consultant for ADB, and when I'm not doing ADB work, I also do other clean energy and climate change related work. So today, on behalf of Asian Development Bank, the Energy Sector Group, and the South Asia Energy Division, I'm happy to introduce our our first speaker, and I'll be the MC today, and otherwise I'm not going to really do much else except listen and take notes. So we have a great lineup of panels here. In the first session, we're going to talk about mainly technical solutions, grid enhancing technologies that are needed for the transition to net zero. And then that will feed into the second session, which is about the policy framework, regulatory framework, and financing needs to implement some of these solutions and whatever else might be out there that we may not be talking about in the first part. So um, I'm, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our keynote speaker, Sadie Cox, from the U.S. National Renewable Energy Laboratory. And I think most of you might have seen her on Tuesday morning in the plenary session. She's the uh, National Renewable Energy Laboratory Director of Strategic International Partnerships, if I got that right. So please, Sadie, come on up.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me today. As Dan said, my name is Sadie Cox, and I'm from the U.S. Department of Energy's National Renewable Energy Laboratory. I'm very pleased to be providing some opening remarks today for this session on 21st century transmission and distribution systems for net zero. No transmission, no transition, exclamation point. I think this is the only session that has an exclamation point in it, so I'll try to deliver these remarks very passionately with that in mind. So I'm going to keep my remarks short today so we can dive into the substance of the discussion and so we have plenty of time for conversation with the panelists. If Alexander Graham Bell were alive today, he wouldn't recognize our telecommunication systems. He wouldn't know what this is. But if Thomas Edison were alive, he would certainly recognize the grid, because the vast majority of the world's transmission and distribution systems use the same design that became mainstream when Edison was still alive. We have 19th century architecture that must rapidly evolve to address 21st century challenges. At NREL, we have done a lot of work supporting countries in this region and beyond on competitive renewable energy zones, or areas where renewable energy potential is high and levelized cost of energy is low. These are intended to inform transmission expansion plans. However, as we plan for transmission expansion, we must ensure we are using technologies that are smart, flexible, resilient, and secure. NREL has also undertaken several transmission expansion studies for regions in the United States. The goal of NREL's transmission integration research is to tackle the challenges of integrating renewables and other technologies into the bulk power system while maintaining safe, efficient, and cost-effective grids. To do this, we conduct power systems simulation and undertake large grid integration studies using production costs and dynamic modeling and simulation of large power systems. We look at transmission system planning to support high VRE integration with grids. And we also analyze co-simulation of combined transmission and distribution systems to gauge the impact of distributed energy resources on the bulk system and how bulk system operations impact distributed energy resources. These analyses inform solutions that can be brought to bear to support a net zero energy system. Climate resilience and cybersecurity are also integral to 21st century transmission and distribution systems. On the topics of cybersecurity and resilience at NREL, we have a whole center that looks at improving current understanding of potential energy service disruption and consequences of those disruptions, including cyber attacks and natural disasters. Improving energy security under different scenarios by continuing to provide energy services and protecting energy systems when human or natural disruptions occur. And overall, working with partners to develop more resilient energy systems with technology solutions that some of our panelists will describe today. Even within the context of this important research and analysis that I just described at NREL and also occurring at other institutions around the world, the energy transition is not going to happen fast enough without rapid evolution of transmission and distribution systems. Renewable energy development efforts are often highly focused on electricity production and use, and new renewable capacity and output cannot be readily brought online unless transmission capacity and efficiency increase rapidly. For some context and using one example, if we electrify everything in the United States, total energy consumption will be cut in half, but total electricity production will have to increase 300%. We know we can double transmission capacity by replacing Edison-era ASCR conductors with advanced high temperature, low sag conductors, but even though these have been available for more than 20 years, their use is not yet mainstream in most countries. Renewable resources are abundantly available and there's significant investment going into renewable energy, but much greater attention needs to be placed on modernizing grid infrastructure. According to the IEA, global energy investment has exceeded $1 trillion per year since 2015 and is set to hit $1.7 trillion this year. A lot of the investment is going into renewable energy development. However, the grid we have now and the grid required to support very large-scale renewable energy deployment presents a mismatch. Transmission and distribution systems need to become smarter, more flexible, more resilient to climate change, and more secure against cyber attacks. Multiple grid-enhancing technologies are available, including but not limited to high voltage direct current systems, high temperature, low sag conductors, dynamic line ratings, on-grid energy storage, and digital control systems for automation and cybersecurity, among others. Further, policy and regulatory challenges related to smart grid and advanced options need to be identified and addressed in order to realize and mobilize the finance needed to accelerate the necessary transmission and distribution evolution. So I look forward to hearing from panelists today about some of the challenges as well as the solutions that we can consider as we seek to prepare the grid for very high levels of variable renewable energy integration. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And now the second part of my job is to introduce the moderator of the first session, Ms. Darina Mann, who is also from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. And we'll talk about some of the technical solutions first. And Darina, I'm going to turn it over from you. My job's 2/3 done now.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. As Dan mentioned, my name is Darina Mann. I'm with the National Renewable Energy Labs, and there I oversee our portfolio of work in Southeast Asia and the Pacific. I was very fortunate to get a preview of some of the presentations that our speakers will be giving today. And I promise you it's going to be very interesting. So I'm glad that you're here to enjoy that with us. I don't want to spend too much time speaking, so I would like to move on to our first presenter. As Sadie had alluded to, we do quite a lot of work at NREL on grid modernization. And I'm very pleased to present one of our colleagues, Dr. Fei Ding. She is a group manager who oversees our grid automation and controls team. And Fei unfortunately could not join us today. She's based in the US, but she pre-recorded a video for us on some of her research that we'd like to share. And I'm getting played off. And if you do have any questions about some of the content that Fei presents in her video, I'm happy to serve as a conduit for those questions and make connections after this presentation. But with that, I will move you to this.
My name is Fei Ding. I'm from NREL and have been working at NREL for over 8 years. Now I'm leading the grid automation and controls group. My team is working with industry and utilities to address both near-term and future challenges related to clean energy grid integration. Thanks very much for having me here, and also I'm very sorry that I couldn't join this workshop in person. But I have my contact information listed at the end of this presentation, so if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. The United States has set up a net zero emission goal by 2050. Almost all the energy sectors are considering adopting clean energy to reach such goal. From the generation side, we have solar, wind, hydrogen, biofuel, and so on. From the demand side, a significant number of commercial, industrial, and residential customers are adopting solar PV systems and switching from traditional gas-powered vehicles to electric vehicles. All these changes reflect clean energy adoption. At the meantime, they will cause a lot of challenges into the grid infrastructure. For both transmission and distribution grids, they were built a while ago and demonstrate certain limits to host additional generation and electrified loads. To handle these new resources, many utilities in the United States are adopting grid modernization and digitalization. Before we dive into what that really means, please let's first take a look at this example. To analyze how much clean energy that the current grid can afford, there is a research topic on hosting capacity studies. Take a solar photovoltaic as an example. PV hosting capacity is defined as the maximum PV capacity that can be integrated into the grid without causing any operation violations. Aero researchers have been working on hosting capacity analysis for years. In the past, we conducted a study for California system. The study was done on the synthetic distribution circuits created for San Francisco. As shown on the left side, over 2,000 distribution feeders were analyzed, and they are of different number of customers, different loading conditions, and so on. The red figure shows the result of 500 feeders. The hosting capacity results for these 500 networks differ a lot. But as shown in this figure, many of them have hosting capacity and very low, which can only afford PV capacity less than 25% of peak load. So to expand the hosting capacity, we could upgrade the physical infrastructure. Thermal and voltage are the two major factors limiting the hosting capacity. So we can do upgrades on the distribution service transformers and distribution lines to expand the thermal capacity, and also can add more voltage regulation devices to improve the hosting capacity. This circuit shows an example. For the original network, at a desired PV penetration level, multiple violations are observed. After conducting infrastructure upgrade, all the violations are gone. Such effort can be considered or defined as grid hardening. They rely on significant investment to upgrade aging infrastructure. Here is some example showing the cost related to these activities. In addition to physical infrastructure upgrade, there could be other methods to modernize the grid in order to support clean energy adoption and use these clean energy systems to improve grid operations. Grid modernization efforts can be majorly divided into 9 categories. Despite of physical infrastructure hardening, many other categories, or almost all the other categories, heavily depend on digitalization and automation. Please let me take one step further and introduce ADMS and DERMS, which are related to these 4 areas. ADMS stands for Advanced Distribution Management Systems. It is an enterprise-level system that brings different utility systems into one platform. With the integration of multiple utility management systems, ADMS enables various advanced applications, which can be real-time state estimation, load forecasting, voltage optimization, fault location, isolation, service restoration, and a bunch of other applications. ADMS is mainly used to monitor and control distribution grid assets. It is deployed at the distribution control room and responsible for maintaining network reliability and security. On the other hand, DERMS stands for Distributed Energy Resource Management System. It is usually a software-based platform that is used to monitor and control distributed energy resources. Depending on the size and ownership of distributed energy resources, DERMS can operate in different ways. For example, DERMS can directly manage a utility-scale solar wind system, but it can also control a group of small rooftop solar systems or a group of EVs. With the existence of ADMS and DERMS, we can conduct a variety of applications to support clean energy adoption and operate these systems to make them grid friendly. This slide shows a study that we did on a real California distribution network. There are a group of voltage profiles obtained under different scenarios. For the baseline, which was labeled as no control, the right curve shows there are significant overvoltage issues. So, to allow such high PV penetration, which is 17% of peak load, we either have to curtail PV or upgrade the grid infrastructure to fix the issue. But none of these are economically desirable. However, if we look at the blue color, this is the voltage profile obtained after adopting DERMS solution. The voltage can be always within the allowed range. That means through advanced control solutions provided by DERMS, we are able to control the grid infrastructure to host very high PV penetration. In addition to expanding clean energy hosting capacity, grid digitalization and automation can also enable the clean energy to be a valuable asset to improve system reliability and resilience. Let's use this animation to show one example of it, how it works. Under legacy grid infrastructure and operation scheme, when there is a significant outage happened, the entire grid could be under dark. However, with advanced grid automation, we can divide the grid into multiple microgrids by operating network switches and use local resources to re-energize individual networks quickly. The local microgrid operation can be further enhanced by coordinating with solar, wind, energy storage, controllable loads to enable longer sustainability. Also, when needed, network switches can be operated again to reorganize microgrid configuration and prepare for prolonged outage conditions. Just as these two figures shown, the green shaded areas represent the actual loads that were supplied during a major outage condition. With grid automation and DR controls, we can see significant more loads can be supplied during grid outages. So with the finish of the previous slide, I will end my presentation. I hope this very short presentation can give you some knowledge about how grid modernization and automation can be used to further support clean energy adoption. I also provided 2 links introducing NREL's related work. Please feel free to reach out if you have questions. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. All right, so I would like to welcome our next presenter to the stage, Mr. Tara Pradhan, who is the Chief Project Management Directorate at the Nepal Energy Authority. And he will be sharing NEA's experience with ATLS conductors. Mr. Pradhan.
So I work in NEA. Not working. Okay. So our organization is a vertically integrated organization which has responsibility for generation, transmission, and distribution. But we have lots of IPPs. We purchase a lot of IPPs, powers from IPPs. So, but transmission and distribution is sole responsibility which lies under NEA. So, transmission is a very difficult part for this expansion as well as new construction because of technical difficulties also there and social and administrative difficulties are also there because lots of protests are there in Nepal for expansion of transmission lines because this covers lots of right of ways. So how to build a transmission line is very, very challenging. And I think it is not only in Nepal, I think in all parts of the world, this electricity demand is growing and electrical cooking is growing. So the increase in capacity for transmission and building of new transmission line is very, very important for us. So, but construction of transmission line takes lots of time, but the generation, whenever it comes, we have to be very strong transmission line. We can take all the loads and the generation capacities. These are some of the, actually the first slide shows the normal conductor which has aluminum wires and steel wires in the middle to take the strength of the load. But in the case of STLS conductor, I think the aluminum conductor is, we increase the size of aluminum conductor because it can take more loads. So the middle size is with, instead of steel, there are some of the fibers or some strong wires. It has been developed and it can take higher strength. So why these are called high tension low sag conductor? It means that the normal conventional conductor, they take operate at 75 degrees centigrade, but STLS conductor, they can take up to 150 degrees centigrade, up to 220, 210. So it can take more current, and the sag will be less than the normal conductor. So it is called STLS conductor. So how we have used in STLS in NEA, in older transmission line we have used, as well as in a new transmission lines also we have used. So this is NEA's power generation capacity. I think this is 2,750 we have installed hydropower, which includes this 70 megawatt solar power also. And under construction is 5,000 megawatt, but we have potential for 43,000 megawatts, which is economically viable. So we have another 10,000 megawatts still, they are waiting for PPAs to be done, and it is ready for construction. So this is the same thing I've already said. In the case of transmission line, we have 400 kV, 220 kV, and 132 kV, and 66 kV transmission lines are there. And mostly we are, nowadays we are doing 400 kV, 220 kV, and 130 kV transmission lines. The new transmission, we have the older transmission lines, we have to be upgraded for the coming loads. But for the new transmission lines, it is mainly for the interconnection and the new loads, as well as evacuating power from the hydropower plants, upcoming hydropower plants. So this is our network system. Generally, these the black one, it is 400 kV transmission line we are constructing, and the red one is 132 kV, and some blue river corridors, 220 kV transmission lines are there from north to south. So these are the three types of STLS conductors we have used in NEA system. ACCC means with aluminum conductor, composite core, aluminum conductor composite reinforced, and aluminum conductor in-wire reinforced. Three type of conductors we have already used in NEA. So these are the some of the existing transmission lines we have upgraded by using STLS conductors. So because we cannot make any new transmission lines on those areas which are already packed, and immediate transmission capacity has to be increased, because new transmission line, it cannot be built on the same corridors because of right-of-way issues. And to build the underground transmission line, it is costly, and some where it has to be, even it has to be built, it costs lots of time it takes. So out of from 1 to 7, we have constructed this upgraded this converted this transmission line through high capacity conductors through NEA's own fund, and from 8 to 17 we have done through ADV's loan, and some are under construction stage only. After this transmission line upgradation, we have nearly doubled the transmission capacity of each transmission way, transmission lines. And for this, no right-of-way issues we have faced during implementation. i.e., it has not been done. We didn't have to cut any trees on the right-of-ways. We didn't face any extra social and environmental issues during implementation of these projects. In the new transmission line, we have taken two transmission line. We have done build a new transmission line using STLS conductor, high capacity conductors, and these are two river corridors actually. One from Dana, Kusma to Butwal, and another is Khudi, Markichok, and Bharatpur. One is funded by Asian Development Bank, and another is funded by European Investment Bank. And for this second portion, from Dana to Kusma, we have used normal conductor, but for Kusma to Butwal, we have used high tension, this STLS conductor. On the other case also, Khudi to Markichok, we have done, Manang to Khudi, we have done normal conductor. From Khudi to Markichok to Bharatpur, we have done the transmission line constructed through STLS conductor. So this is the selected transmission line we have done. Why we have done this? It can take the higher capacity of transmission power even at a lesser voltage, and the lesser right of ways has been required for this implementation of transmission line, and the project this duration will be smaller because the right of ways are smaller. We face less challenges than 400 kV transmission line, because 400 kV transmission line nearly it takes 45 kilometer right of way, but 220 kV we are using only 30 meter right of way. So these are the two corridors we have used. If it is a normal 400, there are lots of studies we have done, stability studies, load flow studies we have done, and cost analysis done, whether we have to go to twin moves conductor in 400 kV or STLS conductor in 220 kV. So after long studies, we have chosen these corridors, 220 kV STLS conductor. So the current will be same, because 88 kilometer, the capacity will be twin moves conductor, means it takes around 1350 megawatt. But for this, if you use STLS conductor at lesser voltage, 220 kV, it uses nearly 1500 megawatt it takes. In the case of Khudi Bharatpur, Udipur Bharatpur 67, it is the same case. It uses, but the first one is in the completion phase. Now, after 1 month, it will be completed. The other one, it takes, it is only 70% it is completed. So now, after completion of this project, we can see how the cost we minimize instead of doing 400 kV transmission line rather than 220 kV transmission line. In 88 kilometer transmission line, this suppose if you see this by using STLS conductor, it is line cost for buying materials and construction 33.78 million US dollar, but the right-of-way cost is 5.4 million US dollar. Total cost, it comes around 39 point something million US dollar, and per kilometer length cost is 450 million US dollar, 450,000 US dollar. But if the same has to be implemented in the 400 kV transmission line, the right-of-way cost will be nearly 50% higher, around 8.676 billion US dollar it will take. But the line cost, it will be 44 million US dollar. So it will be the cost of the transmission line, it comes around 600,000 US dollar. But in the case of second also it is same, but since this is EIB project, we have done lots of gap analysis required for the social and environmental protection. So the cost of this implementation has taken little bit late. Because of that, delays of 2 years, the right-of-way cost has increased from the lower, the another transmission line is a little bit higher. So if what I mean to say is if the transmission line construction is delayed, our right-of-way cost is increasing because of the land value is increasing. Because of that, we have to finish the transmission line as soon as possible, as a limited time, so that the cost of the transmission line doesn't become more. And this is a 400 kV transmission line, normal transmission line we have been building. The right-of-way cost is 12 million US dollar, even 45 meter right-of-way. So if you see in this, sorry. I lost it. Okay. So these are the transmission lines we have built. See, this is the right-of-way. Nearly forest has also been mostly, it has to go forest areas, and this terrain, it is a mountainous terrain, and this is the context of methodology during the implementation of the project. Thank you very much.
This clicker has been the foe of us all. Thank you so much. All right, so next, there's so much content to go through. I would like to welcome Mr. Colin Steely with StratCon to the stage. Mr. Steely will be presenting on the kind of energy storage systems and speaking a little bit more about what we would need in the future to support a net zero grid.
Thanks, Darina. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks to the ADB for having me present today. So I represent StratCon, and StratCon came about in 2019 in response to the Philippine RA 11285, which is the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Law. So we are a registered ESCO in the Philippines. And as such, we were acquiring technology partners to deliver on energy efficiency projects. More recently, we have partnered with RV Australia, who provide an ultracapacitor energy storage solution based on LTO, lithium titanate oxide technology. So according to Othman's 2022 book on energy storage applications in transmission and distribution, he has found sort of 17 different services that energy storage can provide the grid, right? And 4 of the 5 sectors are for transmission and distribution. So, the applications of storage are very widespread. But the other point is that to be able to address these situations, battery storage also have to provide multiple services. And I think that's where there's potentially a market barrier for the time being, right? We need storage solutions on high power discharge or high energy. So they have to deliver high amounts of power very quickly, and or they have to deliver high amounts of energy over long periods of time, right? And potentially everything in between. So pump storage is a good example of being able to address both power and energy requirements for grid services. However, we can't apply them everywhere. They're location specific, right? According to Wikipedia, out of the 80 pump storage projects being built above 1,000 megawatts right now, 73 are in China. So are lithium-ion battery energy storage solutions, are they the solution? And there are various lithium-ion technologies out on the market, each with their pros and their cons. Some of them can have long cycle lives. Some can have high C rates, the ability to charge and discharge very quickly, and they have very specific applications. Right? However, how are certain lithium-ion energy storage the solution? We have seen, even until sort of early this year, of lithium-ion explosions, even the Tesla battery in Australia last year. It's quite a famous incident, right? And through 2 papers that are publicly available, you can see that there's a variety of variables on battery storage that really determine their cycle life and their state of health. In the top left diagram, you can see that this paper actually didn't identify which lithium ion. It came from a variety, but one thing that they held constant in this study was to hold the state of charge constant. And the state of charge at 50% showed the lowest degradation rate. But that pretty much means that you need to double the size of the capacity of the battery to achieve those low degradation rates. So how are you comparing apples to apples between these lithium-ion applications? It's not very easy, right? The depth of discharge basically shows how far you can discharge your battery without it affecting its chemical or physical composition, allowing you to recharge to 100%. Now, most lithium ions see about 75 to 90% depth of discharge. The state of charge, how much can you charge your battery, is evidently between 50 to about 80%, right? And then the round trip efficiency, the amount of energy that you put into the battery, how much can you use when you need it, right? That varies between 70 to 80%. So the cycles that these lithium-ion battery manufacturers are providing vary between 5,000 to 7,000 cycles. But as is evident, the way that they're used really has an impact on the warranties and their cycle life. So what is the real state of health after X amount of years, depending on their applications? And a lot of the warranties are very specific in how you can use the batteries. And a lot of projects are designed for one application. So when you start stacking services, the cycle life decreases. 7,000 cycles at 1 cycle per year, being able to double the cycles, that halves the battery life, right? So we're looking for solutions that can meet an infrastructure type of project with a 20-year lifetime. So imagine a battery that can guarantee 35,000 cycles with a 30-year warranty. This provides an LCOS of about 4 to 5 cents per kilowatt hour. It can also provide 100% depth of discharge if required, and 100% state of charge when needed. The round trip efficiency is as high as 98.5% at a C1 charge discharge rate. It also provides up to 10C charge discharge, which means that a 1 megawatt hour battery can charge or discharge in 6 minutes. Right? It has 0 thermal runaway risk, which means the battery cell cannot explode. It has a wide operating temperature between 10 to 70 degrees Celsius, providing minimal degradation over the life of the product. It's stable and reliable. It can also integrate both supply side management and demand side management solutions to deliver a complete solution. So this is what we are bringing to market. These are 2 snapshots taken from the dashboard of their test battery when they began cycling around July 2020. And I took this snapshot from yesterday. So they're basically cycling 13 times a day at a C1 rate, or 1C rate, for over 14,000 cycles. So 2 cycles per day at 14,000 cycles, that's 20 years, right? They haven't reached 35,000 cycles, but it's looking good. This shows pretty much zero degradation on the battery after 14,000 cycles. So to put that in perspective, let's talk about a solar PPA, a solar plus battery PPA. Now, the degradation rate of solar is about 0.7%, and that's reflected in the orange line. If you're going to add an alternative lithium ion based on the degradation rates that we previously saw, you're going to have to augment the battery pretty much every 9 years, right? But that means that that grade shaded area, that's curtailed solar. That's lost profits. That means that the kilowatt hour cost increases, right? As opposed to Arvio's ultracapacitor being able to cycle at 14,000 cycles, 2 cycles per day, that's about 20 years. So the degradation rate of the system is driven by the solar PV and not the battery, minimizing potential curtailment, right? And Arvio are putting their money where their mouth is, and they are offering a 90% state of health usable capacity at 15 years and an 85% state of health usable capacity at 20 years. Again, frequency control, we can provide 35,000 cycles at 10C, so we need a smaller energy storage system to deliver on the power requirements for ancillary services. This is an example taken out of the spot market here in the Philippines on the 12th of April this year. The Philippines is similar to the Australian market where we have 5-minute trading intervals, right? With a 5-minute trading interval, you can't have a battery with half C or 1C rate. You need a battery with a high C rate. And here, just taken from an average day, it's a guesstimate, but we're trying to show that, we could cycle our battery over a 5-minute trading interval 5 times, buy-sell periods. And a really clever sort of market development that they have used in Australia is being able to convert a 2-phase line to a 3-phase behind the grid. So for a lot of countries in Asia, this has huge implications where, edge of grid single-phase lines just don't meet 3-phase power requirements. So what are you going to do there? A lot of diesel gensets are required. In this case, we can cut that out, right? Or we can use the single phase, we can convert it behind the meter. And then if you're adding solar on that, we pretty much can provide 90% of the power requirements where you use the single phase or 2-phase line just trickling in to charge the battery. Yeah. One thing on the PPA, we have actually developed a tender proposal, put forward a proposal for a client who demanded a 60% renewable energy mix for 20 years. And we've been able to do that now. Let's hope we win the tender. So closing statement is basically if the energy transition needs to focus on flexibility and resiliency, I think a battery with 35,000 cycles and a 10C rate, it provides a whole lot of flexibility and a whole lot of resilience to an electrical system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colin. So, so far we've talked about HTLS conductors, we've talked about energy storage, and I'd like to introduce our fourth and final presenter who will be talking about microgrids and that as an entry point for automation. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Mr. Narendra De Silva. Mr. De Silva is a general manager for Elecco in Sri Lanka, and he'll be speaking about microgrids.
Thank you very much, ADB, for having me here. Yes, I will keep on speaking. Okay. Yes, exactly, exactly. Tension of mind as well as the other. So thank you very much, ADB, for having me here. So we have come to the part of the distribution, talk about distribution. I'm from a utility in Sri Lanka, having a customer base of about 600,000 customers. And we are selling 1,600 gigawatt hours of energy per annum. There we go. Actually, I'll start my presentation saying that the world is at a transition. Clean energy transition, just energy transition, all these things have a seed of transition. This transition, sociologists say, is created by 4 mega trends: demographic shift, food, water, energy nexus, individual empowerment, and diffusion of power. These major trends are creating a new world. Within that new world, energy sector yes, there we go. Energy sector is also a transformation. What we call this clean energy shift or the just energy shift is proxy to this. Our demand is shifting. Our supply is shifting. Our demand is getting different due to demographic change. Our supply is changing because REs are coming into the picture, as well as our customers' needs are changing. They are expecting more and more individualized service, as well as our governance structure is changing due to the diffusion of power. So once we are struggling in these hot seats to cater for this placid situation. Increasingly, in distribution utilities, we are understanding that even though we bill for kilowatt hours, what we are selling is not kilowatt hours. We are selling a service, a reliable service, while billing for kilowatt hours. This has a very critical issue. The critical issue is that the kilowatt hours sale is geographic, but the individualized, personalized service is not geographic. Among a cluster of customers who need low reliability, there may be 1 or 2 customers who seek very high reliability. How am I to give this? At that placid situation, my governance structure is changing, everything is changing while I'm having this pressure. Up to very recently, we didn't have a solution. Recently, I think we got the solution. The solution, as far as we see, is microgrids. In the future, our distribution utilities are going to metamorphosize into microgrids and reconnect into the grid. We'll be creating reliability microgrids where the customers ask high reliability. These microgrids will operate in 2 modes, connected and disconnected mode. 90% of their life at the disconnected mode, they will be supplying the off-grid, the on-grid support of peak shaving in one hand, as well as the renewable intermittency, addressing the renewable intermittency. Whereas in off-grid mode, these microgrids will be creating, that may be 10% of their lifetime or probably 1% of their lifetime, depending on the grid reliability. During this time, these microgrids will be supplying reliability. These microgrids in peak shaving mode, in the connected mode, the addressing the intermittency of renewables, and in disconnection mode, for short disconnections, for the faults, the battery will be supplementing the load, and in long outages, in maintenance, additional generators will be kicking in. So this is the modality which in the future distribution companies will address this critical concentrated problem. This will be the typical business model where we will be having a microgrid service. Most likely it will be a separate business unit, either within the utility or outside the utility, and it will be generating revenue schemes, the light blue arrows, from the distribution unit, distribution utility, providing reliability supply and peak shaving services. And from the prosumers who are having solar generators or some other renewable generators, the transitional mitigation. Most likely our grid codes will be very tough, asking certain amount of ramping from the solar rooftops, etc. So these ramping solar rooftops will be procuring from the microgrid. So microgrid will generate a cash stream in providing this the transient mitigation support. Further, from the DR customers, there may be demand response customers and the normal customers. Whomever the customer, once when the power is not available, there will be a support from the in place or in supplementing their reliability and getting a cash stream out of that. And for the DR customers, microgrid will be paying for the DR services. So the business model will be microgrid will be earning money from the utility, prosumers, DR customers, and the other customers, as well as microgrid will be paying for the DR customers. This is the typical business model that in the future, most likely the utilities will scatter into. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. De Silva. At this time, I would like to actually, now that we're done with the PowerPoints and heads will not block the bottom half of the screen, I would like to invite the presenters to come back up onto the stage, maybe take a seat, and then we can host a round of questions from the audience. So, gentlemen. Yeah, please choose any spot. Maybe I can start with just an opening question as folks start to think about what they want to ask the panel. But I know Sadie and Dan have spoken about essentially the need for speed, right? The grid is not ready for the renewable technologies and the renewable energy that we want to bring on board and for a net zero future. And all three of you have spoken to solutions that can address that. Could you speak a little bit more about how we can get to that speed? Like, what are some of the roadblocks that you see now and opportunities to address those roadblocks? I don't know who wants to take the first stab at that answer.
What is the question? Can you repeat the question again?
What are some roadblocks? And I think for you, you've already done some of this work, so maybe you could speak to the roadblocks you faced in Nepal.
Transmission line, as I mentioned in this presentation, is a very difficult one to construct because of this.
Is it on? There you go.
Very difficult to construct because of this public protest, because it takes their land, and in that land they cannot do anything except agriculture. So lots of pressure we are facing. And not only that, because of this, there in Nepal, this people's asset is morely, it is land. Whatever they have money, they put in the land. So in order to take their land for the right of way is very difficult, as well as another difficult part is our forest. We have to cut a lot of forest for the transmission line, and how to minimize to cut the transmission trees and minimize the cutting of trees, and we need to do lots of EIA, IEs. So in order to build a new transmission line, it is very difficult for us. And how to minimize this cutting way of the time of the transmission period, it is very difficult, main task for our utilities. And for the existing corridors, in order to build a transmission line, it is nearly impossible. That is only option is either you have to go to underline transmission network, or you have to build this upgrade with a higher capacity transmission lines. So we change the conductor, that is the easiest way. And we shifted time of construction of new transmission, underground transmission line for these urban areas. And for the building a new transmission, underground transmission line also, we have to do IEs. It takes around 7 or 8 years. So we cannot wait for so long time. We do wherever possible, we do change of the conductor, and we go for the higher transmission line, underground transmission line, and in that way we serve our people how to supply the in a particular manner. And in the case of this new transmission line also, minimize the cost and minimize the time for transmission line using this STLS conductor is one of the model. But it is not always, it is exactly the same. Whatever we have faced, we have to do lots of permutation combinations and see which conductor is good, whether we have to go to higher voltage transmission line, or we can do by minimizing transmission line of lesser voltage with STLS conductors that we are doing.
Yes, actually the major issue what I'm seeing is this, as we discussed, this entire structure is changing, the requirements are changing. In this situation, we need to restructure our network, which needs substantial capital. If that we are going to mitigate with this capital, probably we'll have to go with very innovative technological solutions, just like these microgrids. That's the first part of the story. But the most difficult part of the story, I think, is that the institutional restructuring. Our institutions got to be reorganized, and our management structures and the way how we do this business, new business models got to come in. All of us sometimes believe that the network and hardware is the most difficult job, but actually most of the time, all over the world that is proven, getting new business models and getting new institutions is the biggest challenge. So one way we are stuck up with huge amount of capex or very high level of technology innovation, one way or the other. On the other side, we need a lot of human capital to come in getting this thing running into the entirely new business model. That's the way how I see it. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I think you're also queuing up a little bit of the presentation after the coffee break. Colin?
Thanks. I think in general, it's definitely like with renewable energy projects themselves, it's connection issues for battery storage at large at utility scale. But with regards to sort of ultracaps and LTO, we're not cheap. So, when people want to say, what are you comparing, LFP to what we have, it's like, well, you can't compare these, they're not apples to apples. And going through that process of having to, show them the value of flexibility and resilience and, stable, reliable battery supply, it's not an easy challenge given that there's so much other alternatives on the market that are substantially less on a kilowatt hour cost, but you have to make the argument. So going through that process all the time as it's a new technology is painstaking sometimes.
Thank you. I guess I want to open up. Is there anyone in the audience that has a question for our panel? Sure, please come up to the mic.
Thank you very much. Comprehensive presentations made by the presenters. In fact, this is the forum that we discuss about the interconnections, regional interconnections, and bilateral, multilateral energy trades. Now, I don't know whether Dr. Narendra made the presentation considering remote area microgrids or like a microgrids have all over the country or not. But my question is now, since we are focusing on regional interconnection, bilateral, multilateral energy trades, how we can match these two concepts? I mean, microgrid concept, and because these are the capital intensive projects. I mean, having transmission lines, not just a 1 million, 2 million projects. Those are maybe 500, 400 projects. So how you can explain, or how you, what do you see? What is your opinion on that?
Thank you very much for that very interesting question. The way how I'm looking at it is that the regional interconnections is operational optimization. We know that when we have two regions, separate out and optimize, these both sub-optimize. If you connect them together, it becomes a large one region which optimizes deep down. So basically, the operational optimization, we are earning money by interconnecting through operational optimization. So that is one high level case of optimization, which is essential. If that we are going through this road where there is no other modality, but these regional grids got to come in. On the other hand, at the lowest end of the network, at the last mile of the network, there is another bigger problem where the geographic optimization. Geographically, resources are scattered because that comes only at the distribution level. Various people need various requirements, where the network we cannot. Say there are 10 persons, one person need higher reliability. If I design the network for higher reliability, all the rest of the 9 don't get just power because they are overpaying for unwanted reliability. Whereas if I design the network for the lower reliability, there is one person who doesn't get just power because he doesn't get his services. Now there is a question, geographic optimization problem, as to how that this is with the this new addition of this new concept. Earlier we had clean energy. Now all of a sudden we got another concept, just energy. So this once when we come to that justice part of the story, that geographic optimization also has come very hardly attacking on us. So the way how I'm looking at is the grid will, macroscopically, grid will expand into regional grids, while microscopically, the distribution grid will scatter into microgrids in the future, addressing these two problems in two domains. Macroscopic problem in the macro domain and the microscopic problem in the micro domain. That's how that I see that. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from the audience? Do you have anything on? No? You were so clear that, or you overwhelmed them with all the information. Yes, please.
Hi, quick question. My name is Kabir Malik from the World Bank. So the case for microgrids is obviously compelling. I was trying to understand a little bit on the implementation side. So I think I missed what the plans are for Sri Lanka with regard to implementation of the microgrids. Is this something that's already happening? Would be good to understand. And B, what is the role of the utility in facilitating microgrids, and what are the incentives? You talked about institutional change, which is obviously a big intractable problem sometimes, but would be good to get some insights.
Thank you, Ali. Always World Bank asks the perfect question. Thank you very much. Actually, the way how this microgrid business is coming into Sri Lanka is, at the moment we are having a lot of rooftops. And we see as a distribution utility, moment that the distribution reliability is coming down, there are people who come up with battery storage systems, the domestic level battery storage systems. So we always have a feeling that something sub-optimization or something lower than the optimum solution is taking place. In the microscopic level, when we go down the reliability. Nationally, those batteries should not be implemented that way. Either the capital going for those batteries should be invested by the distribution utility for enhancing the grid, or otherwise the utilities got to bring batteries in to create this wanted reliability. So that's the macroscopic picture of the story. So always we feel that there is, especially when these domestics start getting batteries, when the hotels and other large installations start getting diesel power plants, we always feel that as a distribution utility, we are not doing something correct. We feel that nationally, macroeconomically, there is a better solution than that. To bring this backup power by the utility and providing more reliable power sold at a higher value. Definitely that reliable power, that bit of reliability has a cost. But that cost should be charged from only the persons who need that. So this was the dilemma that we were struggling probably for the last 5-6 years, until ADB made a grant and we implemented a microgrid, a campus microgrid within LECO. Once when we went through that experience, and once when we saw that this microgrid is fantastically operating, providing benefits to both the entities, we started feeling probably that technology fix is available, and that is this particular microgrid concept. That's why I said still institutionalization and creating SBUs and creating cash flows for this, that part of the equation is not solved. That is not cracked. But we feel that it is not that difficult also to crack that, to creating SBU. And most likely, I was negotiating with ADB to go forward with that. Even now, we have got another microgrid coming in Sri Lanka for 5 hotels, regional hotels. They are getting together and going into a microgrid because their reliability is so bad. So things are happening. Always that's the case. Once you bring a concept, somewhere something is going to happen and it's going to work out if that is the true solution. So that's what's happening at the moment in Sri Lanka. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Yes. And please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Daler from Tajikistan. My question on off-grids. How is the data collected and integrated to the bigger network, bigger system? Thank you.
Unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, we don't have off-grids because we are 100% electrified. But probably I can draw up certain experience we have in some other regions. Actually, the data integration is a major issue pertaining to the off-grid microgrids. That's exactly correct. Generally, what it is been done up to now is that you collect data in the microgrid platform. There will be a microgrid operating platform. You aggregate all the data, and high-level data set will be exported through a data link. Usually that's what happens, but I know there are certain instances where even the low-level data is being pumped through a data link. Otherwise, there's only one way. That is during a physical visit, you got to upload data. Other than that, especially when it's very remote microgrids, but still the most important thing is, if it is a microgrid, if it got a controller, you have data. It's only the question is bringing data home. Still you have data. That is far better than not having any data. So regional microgrids do get data. Bringing them home is the issue. Thank you.
Other questions? Dan. Watch out, guys.
Dalar's question hit me, and we didn't really talk about artificial intelligence. I mean, we talked, Faye talked about automation and digitization, but what do you see as the role of AI? I mean, Mr. De Silva, you mentioned the data management issue, right? So with smart meters and digital control systems and everything, there's too much data. And in my mind, it seems like there's a great opportunity for AI to enable data analysis in a way that we haven't been able to do before. And I'd be interested to hear from all of you what your view is in terms of this broader automated system operations, not just at the microgrid level, but throughout the system, large hydro generation, integration with the transmission network. And also, so actually two questions. One about using AI to really advance how the system can be operated and deliver better reliability and service. And then the flip side of automation and digitization is cybersecurity risk, if you'd also comment on that. Thanks.
Sounds good. Maybe we could start here so that we can give Mr. De Silva a break.
I'm not actually in the field person for this AI, but anyway, our system mostly it is use advanced automated system in the distribution as well as in transmission. We have been using maybe whatever updates are coming in the substation automation as well as supervisory control in the transmission system, that it is being updated every year in every system we are doing as per the requirement. Lots of data in our system also in Nepal. Also, substation automation as well as transmission expansion. We use latest technology for this implementation of this in the transmission network as well as in distribution network. The upgrade, this higher capacity of AI implementation in this transmission system, I think it will be growing in the transmission line because data security as well as all the network security is the most important priority, and is the national security also threats are there. So implementation of AI in this our network system management will be utmost in the coming days also. Thank you.
So as part of Avio's solution, integrated solution, they do have a proprietary energy management system that, given they really do sort of develop microgrids to some extent, has the capability of integrating supply side management as is required. But it's such an open platform that they can also integrate demand side management solutions and control end loads to ensure some type of grid stability, no matter how small it is. So that the platform being so open allows for different end loads to be controlled. Do they have a level of machine learning or AI yet? No, but that can then be integrated to a SCADA system one step above, which is part of this discussion. So very open system to allow for that.
If I am to expand from that point and the presentation that NREL did, actually these distribution management systems are, these ADMS are 3-layered structures. Northbound or the bottom side, you have a IoT, Internet of Things platform, which integrate the devices. That's basically very network level, hardware level platform. Then in the middle, we have the ADMS, the distributed management system. And on top, as Dan very correctly said, you have a AI analytics platform. So unless you lay that analytics platform on top of the ADMS, what you are going to get is huge influx of data. After a very short time, you'll be flooded with data. You don't know what to do with data. Usually when our IT guys don't know what to do with data, they press the delete button. So that's what it happens to your data. So unless you crunch this data and bring it to a very structured set of decision-making level data sets. So the essentially AI is going to come in this analytics platform, as well as for that particular question, what you said is exactly correct. when the data streams are breaking, new AI engines gap the data. So probably your link is very weak. Probably you are getting very abrupt data sets. But at the control desk, you start seeing a beautiful data stream where the data is being plugged in by the AI machines. And the machine learning, by and by, make it so accurate that eventually you start feeling you don't want a very reliable network. So these both ends. So that is of course at the northbound end. At the IoT level, AI is working to cap the data, as well as anyhow in the future, these ADMS platforms will be layered with AI support, because otherwise this data is going to create no value to any utility. And especially we got to understand, for utilities, we have been funded by public, whether we are private or otherwise, it's people who are paying for us. And we should not implement artifacts which we cannot create value. So this AI analytics is a must in that context. Thank you.
It's really nice to hear a discussion around AI that's positive and that can help us versus, potentially take away all our jobs and, trick us into doing things online. Are there other questions for our panel? We have a few more minutes, so certainly want to make sure that we take advantage of our esteemed panelists. Yes. When you wait long enough, someone will finally put their hand up because they're thinking it, they're just shy.
I'm Chandan Ghosh. I'm from Nepal Electricity Authority. Just a general question. Can we use those modern batteries in electric vehicles?
Sorry, in where?
The modern batteries, can it be used in electric vehicles?
In electric panels?
Vehicles.
Electric vehicles, sorry. Yeah, LTO actually, the lithium titanate oxide battery technology is already being used in commercial buses and other forms of electric vehicle transportation. And that's, I think, the initial application was in EVs, and then they got brought out to other applications. Yeah, it's still a relatively new technology, and it's expensive. It's not cheap on a capital cost basis per kilowatt hour, but on a levelized cost of storage, it's far cheaper. Yeah. Let's hope so. I mean, we're working on a couple of projects right now, and the first project could be awarded, should be finalized in 2 weeks, so fingers crossed there. But there are a couple of tenders coming out where the specifications of the tender requirements are showing that, for example, they want to have 80% state of health after 20 years. So, will the language require for augmentation to maintain 80% state of health year on year, or will it allow for a drop? And then, so there's some variations in the language of tenders that are more in favor of LTO technology, while others need to get there. Thank you.
Great. Any final questions for our panel? All right. So I guess maybe as a final question from my end, it's we're at the Asia Clean Energy Forum. It's a very special space. We have governments, academics, private sector all in the room. I'm curious. I just want to give everyone a chance to have final words in this panel of what would you say to this energy community that we have? We're all working towards a modernized grid. We're working towards a fossil-free future. How could this community help you or work with you and your technology? What would you see as being a collaboration possibility, or what would support you in your work? I don't know who wants to take that question.
Whatever this stainless conductors we have used in the transmission line, we have to do lots of studies before implementation, because if it is very, very long transmission line, maybe we have to go to higher voltage rather than upgrading with stainless conductor, using a stainless conductor because of the higher losses. in the higher voltage drop if it is a very, very long line. If it is a compact transmission line of up to 150 kilometer, then it serves very good result. And another thing I want to mention is if the loads are continuously 24 hours, 365 days, full loads are there, maybe the losses could be a little bit higher. But if the seasonal demands are for the particular time of hours in a day, 6 or 7 hours, or in a 1 or 2, 3 months, or like in Nepal, there is seasonal swelling of waters are there in the rivers. There are lots of hydropower generation is more. In that case, limited time of this capacity is being used, then making a higher voltage transmission line maybe is maybe too costly. In that case, this STLS converter serves very effectively. So these things also you have to study in a detailed manner. So designing the more modern transmission line, all the things has to be studied before implementing a new technology. That is very, very important. You cannot implement immediately for all the things without seeing all the details of analysis without doing that. That I wanted to highlight.
Sure, at the distribution and transmission level, we got to see batteries as an infrastructure project and treat them accordingly. We've got to see that they last 20 years minimum and start taking it from there.
For all the energy sector professionals, either utilities or outside, I'll just tell that we are at a massive era of disruption, transformation. We are at substantial pressure. If we consider this egg is going to break. If it breaks inside, it's called birth. If it breaks outside, it's a disaster. So utilities, please break it inside and make it a birth. The outsiders, please don't put too much pressure and spill it all over yourself. Let it to create a birth. So that's my message. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Well, I want to thank the entire panel for a very productive discussion. Thank you so much for being here. And certainly want to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon. I know there are lots of competitive, interesting things to listen to, so being in this room with you has been a joy. I think at this point we're going to a coffee break, right, Dan? So everyone can get caffeinated and be back here in about half an hour. Oh. Sorry, I shouldn't dismiss that.
That's okay. I just wanted to say go ahead and take a break, but please come back at 4 o'clock, because if you liked this part, the second part's going to really be great. And I tell people, I gave a presentation this morning about advanced conductors, about a project in the Philippines, and the wires business. Generation is really sexy, right? Like there's trillions of dollars to build renewable energy power plants, but if we can't deliver that electricity, what good are they? It doesn't matter, right? So this is the most boring part of the business. But it's the most important part to get to the transition, to get to net zero and beyond. So we have a great lineup for the second session, including some more colleagues from Nepal and Sri Lanka, and also from the Philippines Energy Regulatory Commission. Hopefully Ms. Montaner got here. And so come back at 4 o'clock, please. Oh yeah, sure. Gotta get a photo. Yeah. Go down in front.
Should we go in front? Where would you like? Okay.
Are you from the, into the window? Yes.
in the first part, and now we're going to talk about policy, regulatory, finance issues. And Lorraine Akiba, who's a former chief regulator from Hawaii, is going to take over. And just one quick note, we're going to do Chatham House rules for this session now. So Lorraine, take it away.
Aloha, everybody. As Dan just said, I'm from Hawaii. Aloha and mabuhay. Welcome to the power session at the end of the day. I call this the power session because this is where we talk about real world issues with regulatory policy and financing in terms of really implementing the smart grid of the future, the 21st century transmission and distribution system. We're very honored to have a distinguished panel of speakers, and I think you have their bios, but let me just quickly go through who they are here. Immediately to my left is Mark Masuura, who is going to give a perspective from Hawaii on the regulatory and policy background. He is a senior program manager for the Smart Grid program, a member of the Hawaii Natural Energy Institute team that has done a lot of work in Southeast Asia and in the Asia Pacific area. So he's going to be able to, because he's got the technical chops as well, talk about some of the things and make the segue with what we heard in the first panel of this afternoon session. Sharon is with the Philippines regulator, the Energy Regulatory Commission. Madam Chair could not join us, but Sharon is a very capable and knowledgeable representative from Philippines ERC. Next to her, we have Damita, who is representing Sri Lanka, is a regulator from Sri Lanka, and will give that perspective. And as you notice, even though we've been talking all throughout Asia, all these folks represent island grids. So I want to keep that in mind for all the island. We talked about the blue continent, the island countries that are connected by the blue ocean, and we make a bigger continent than some of these larger land masses. So we have a lot to say in terms of getting to the 21st century grid of the future. And of course, next to Damita is Lei Zhang, who is a ADB staff person and will share some additional deep dive information on financing, because like everything else, show me the money, it doesn't happen without financing and capital. And I think the first panel speakers alluded to that. And last but not least is Mr. Ganeshan. Yeah, he has to leave us. So he's going to kind of do an opening for us with his remarks that touch upon regulatory policy and financing as they address or integrate with achieving the transmission system of the 21st century. So because he has to leave, it's not because he doesn't want to remain with us, but he has some other obligations upstairs meeting with ADB folks and also some ministers that have arrived. So without further ado, I want to get right to the substance of the program. We're going to have Q&A at the end, so please stay engaged. If you have a question, a burning question for somebody after they're done with their presentation, step up, but we will have an ample Q&A for half an hour, so they're limited to 10 minutes. And I am a very strict moderator, so I've forewarned them, but they'll be able to cover all their material, and you'll have the PowerPoints. Not everybody has PowerPoints, but you'll have those PowerPoints on the website after the presentation and when you go back home from this conference. So shall we, you want to come to the dais, or you would prefer to stay there? Up to you. Okay. You want to stay there? You come up. Because you're kind of giving us our opening keynote, Mr. Kishing. Feel free. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kulman Gesing, Managing Director, Nepal Electricity Authority. No transmission, no transition. That's, I think, very relevant topics. Without transmission, there is no power flow. If there is no power flow, how we can consume electricity? In Nepal, we have generation, hydropower generation, many hydropower generation, almost 100% hydropower generation, and generation from different locations is far away, and without transmission we cannot supply to the load centers and export to the countries that we are exporting. So transmission connectivity is very, very important, not only transmission, distribution system also. So in Nepal, we have a master plan of transmission line and distribution master plan. For last 2-3 years, we had been a serious problem for distribution system. Because of distribution system, we could not supply reliable and quality supply in city areas and as well as in industrial areas. So transmission and distribution augmentation was our top priority, and it becomes the top priority for coming years. If we can supply power with quality supply, the people, the consumer, will be confident enough to convert their consumption of gas to electricity or diesel to electricity. We have many electrical vehicle promotion campaigns in Nepal. Almost 50% of the import vehicle now is electrical vehicle. There are many electrical vehicle promotion and conversion from gas to electricity. So these fuels, we have to transit to electricity. Everything should be converted to electricity. That means we have to augment the electrical system and transmission system. That is becoming the challenge. So how to finance it becomes another challenge. Financing the transmission and distribution system is now becoming the major challenge. Huge investment. For next 5 to 7 years, we need more than $8 billion to $10 billion dollars of investment in transmission and distribution system. We are requesting for ADB, World Bank, and development partners, and we are investing internally also, but it is not enough. So innovative financing, how we can do that part we are looking for. For distribution, for efficiency and cost reduction, we have to go for smart metering and energy efficiency and automation of the system, whole system automation. That requires huge investment. So now for distribution, we are going for OPEX and CAPEX model for distribution, this smart metering. So that will reduce the cost of this investment required for development partners. The private sector can come and operate for 7 to 8 years or 10 years, and they can take their return, and system can be left for operation. So we are going for distribution maintenance also for private sector. So this will also ease out our investment plan. In transmission, huge investment is required. So we are now going for TBCB, tariff-based competitive bidding, so that private sector can come for certain sections of transmission line. They can come and invest for certain years. So that will ease out the investment in transmission line. TBCB is for, I think, for maybe 10 to 15 years, and they can take returns from the transmission business. They can operate, they can invest for the certain period of time, and they can hand over to the government. So these are the investment that private sectors can come into. So we are opening in distribution as well as in transmission private sector. In generation, there are many private sectors coming because generation business is lucrative. But for transmission and distribution, we have to give them the ample opportunities and a field where they can look into their return. So I think smart metering and automation and digitization part, we are going for certain sector, private sector investment also. So these are the development that we are going to have in coming future, and that will reduce the cost, and that will reduce the system loss, and make more efficient the utility that we are running. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gising. Thank you, Mr. Gising. He has a busy agenda today at ADB, as we all did, balancing meetings and work and being at this panel. So thank you again. And feel free, I know you want to hear a little bit, but I know your ADB staff guide here is waiting for you to get back upstairs. So feel free to leave it at any time you want to. Thank you so much again. You gave a very good overview. Now for the deep dive, we're going to start, as I said, with Mark Masuura from my lovely state of Hawaii. And all the speakers will come up during their presentation to the podium. But,
All right. All right, good afternoon. Good to be here again. So I'm going to be talking about a little bit of the transition in Hawaii. I'll touch upon some transmission issues, but kind of what we did, what happened in Hawaii to kind of kick us off and get us going in direction to where we could get to the levels of renewable energy we are today. So it kind of all started back in 2008. At that time, I was at the Hawaiian Electric Company. I was a director of transmission planning. And at that time, that was the time when we had the financial crisis. Oil prices spiked. My energy bill went from a couple $100 a month to before $500 a month. I mean, it doubled very quickly. And that had a very chilling effect on the economy in Hawaii. We had a recession as a result. So companies were, they can't budget, they can't operate with that kind of spikes and volatility in prices. So there was a big impetus for doing something, getting off of this oil that's kind of driving this volatility. So the state of Hawaii and the Department of Energy got together. They made an MOU that Department of Energy would come and support Hawaii in its clean energy transition with an eye towards Hawaii being the vision of the future. Right? We can do a lot quickly in the islands, and that lessons learned can then be transferred to larger grids. After that, then the state of Hawaii and the Hawaiian Electric Company entered into an agreement that Hawaiian Electric Company would agree to, take on the rooftop solar, take on the big wind projects. But that also came with the recognition from the state that, there's no transition without transmission, but there's no transition without a utility. So the utility's financial health need to be maintained in light of the declining sales that they would see with the rooftop solar coming online. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. So that agreement was signed. It was kind of a roadmap as to what the utility would do and then what the state would do going forward. So later, the next year, they passed the RPS law. So we started out at a goal of 70% renewable by 2030, I think, yeah. And then it also added an energy efficiency goal, which was ambitious, 30% energy efficiency in the same time frame. In that act, there was a lot of enabling things like trying to streamline procurement for state agencies on energy efficiency projects. There was a fund that was created to have a loan program for people that wanted to kind of take out a loan and then do their energy efficiency and pay back the loan with the savings kind of thing. So a lot of things were in that bill in 2009. The next year, there was a barrel tax that was added. University of Hawaii, our HNEI, is actually funded by some of this barrel tax. So our objective there is to kind of put ourselves out of business, I guess, there. We're trying to reduce oil consumption in Hawaii. We're mandated as having the responsibility to kind of help the Hawaii state of Hawaii transition. So the big thing then was on the decoupling, we talked about trying to make the the utility remain whole in this transition is decoupling from the sales metric and just what's the cost of service, trying to reduce the regulatory lag in recovery so they can invest in transmission and things like that that are needed to enable the transition and then get the recovery quicker. Then we added EVs after that, some other geothermal enabling things that helped in that vein. And then 2015, we went to the 100% renewable goal. Right? Other things on the bottom, like feed-in tariff rules. There was a lot of discussion about interconnection, what's fair to require of people, things like that. So a lot of work in the regulatory space. So in also added tax credit. So we have a federal tax credit that's being renewed every year. Basically, you get a tax credit on investments you make or in production. When you produce, you get a tax credit for your production. There's different programs. State has also a tax credit system, and then there's also property tax credits for renewable energy projects. Okay. And then that then opened up into the planning process. So how are we going to get to the 100% renewable goal? So this is also part of the regulatory process. There's an integrated grid planning process where the utility will come up with its long-term plan. There's a 5-year plan in that long-term plan that then focuses on going out for resources in the near term. So they also did studies on grid energy, renewable energy zones. So what's the cost of transmission for different areas that gets incorporated into this plan? They go out RFP for resources. That gets folded into the plan as far as what the cost of energy is going to be. That gets submitted to the commission. They approve that, and then they sign the contracts and then move forward. So this is kind of a process we see, I think, in the Asia Pacific region. Sometimes the procurements of resources is not always tied to the plan. There's always an IRP or some kind of a resource plan, but then connecting that then to what gets actually procured, I think is something that we preach a lot. So the grid operators know that when we do the plan and then the resources are tied to the plan, it's going to work when they interconnect it. So that tends to move things along quicker as well. So this competitive bidding framework is in place so that we don't allow one-off proposals. Somebody can't just walk up to the utility and say, I want to connect, a 10 megawatt or 100 megawatt project. All the resources have to go through this competitive bidding process unless it gets waived by the commission, but waivers are very hard to come by, as you can imagine. We want the competitive bidding process to drive down the cost for renewables on our grid. So it's been successful. So we've had several tranches of RFPs that have gone out, and as you can see, in the hundreds of megawatts coming on with 4 hours of battery storage associated with each of these. Because for this tender, it was a dispatchable renewable energy RFP. So you needed to be dispatchable. But the other interesting thing is we've transitioned on how we do our PPA structures. So we started as available. We're only going to pay for the energy you produce. But then as we get more and more renewables online, the curtailment risk was getting harder and harder to assess. So the prices had to kind of price in that risk. And so you're going to pay for it at the end of the day anyway. So now we're transitioned to a lump sum payment. So these projects will get a lump sum monthly payment for availability. And then the utility has the right to dispatch and use the energy as it sees fit. So the compensation is more tied to the investment because there's no fuel, right, for these. It's more their upfront investment costs they need to recoup. So that monthly payment is there to pay for that investment if they're available, right? The other thing that was very important is the interconnection standards. So getting into the high levels of renewable energy we did. We had a lot of hard lessons learned in the beginning. We started with this 2003 interconnection requirements, and that we found out was inadequate. We had to make a lot of changes. Hawaii and California did a lot of augmenting of that code over time, but initial inverters and things that went under the old code, we still have on the grid, but they're causing some issues, and we had to put in some solutions that I talked about a couple days ago that to fix those things. But now, luckily, the lessons have been learned and incorporated into a 2018 version. They've also come out with a transmission version for inverter-based resources, the IEEE 2800 2022, so just last year. Hawaii is incorporating that right now into its latest RFP requirements. So the bids are going to come in adhering to that new standard. So with all of that, right now we're up a little bit over 30% renewable. As you can see, in 2015, we were very successful at getting above the 15% target. We got 21% where we only needed 15. So that's when the legislature said, wow, you guys are doing good. Let's make it 100%. Right? So now it's getting a little harder and harder. So as you get to the higher penetration levels, there's kind of the more and more things you need to do. I think we can get through battery storage and solar projects maybe up to the 50, 60% renewable range. And like I talked about in the other day when I was talking, when you get above the 60%, you kind of got to look at more long-term storage. So utility has gone out for an RFI for proposals or ideas about long-term storage options that they can use once they get all those projects that I listed there connected. So, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and being on time too. And again, as Mark said, he presented as part of the Pacific Department's panel session yesterday for Pacific region. And so please look, there was a robust panel about Pacific energy transition hard choices. And his presentation from yesterday is on the website. So the things he's referred to today, you can get a deeper dive and some successful case studies from 2 islands in our jurisdiction, Molokai and Kauai. And shout out to the Kauai Island Utility Cooperative. They're already at 100% work on some days running 100% renewable. And there's a phenomenal standard and benchmark, and they continue to innovate. So we have another regulatory perspective, and I think having these dynamic speakers with showing the regulatory perspective shows how important regulatory framework and what the regulators do is in the toolkit to get to the 21st century transmission and distribution system. So Sharon, take it away.
Thank you, and thank you to the ADB for inviting the ERC. Well, just to introduce, I work with the Energy Regulatory Commission since 2001, and I handle the Market Operations Service, which is covers the licensing of all generation companies, the Renewable Energy Division, the Contestable Market Division, and the Spot Market Division. So those we're handling the monitoring of both the wholesale and the retail market. So the ERC was created by virtue of the Electric Power Industry Reform Act. Mainly to promote competition, monitor the market, encourage market development, and ensure customer choice, and penalize abuse of market power. So this is the composition of the commission headed by our chairperson, Mona Lisa Di Malanta, who, by the way, was not able to come here because she has an equally important meeting also today. Okay, so what's the coverage of our regulation? We regulate a 630 billion industry composed of 227 generation companies, 581 power plants, the transmission concessionaire, 376 WESM participants, 141 distribution utilities, and 119 retail electricity suppliers. So we forecast the industry to grow by 7.6 trillion based on the target investments under the Philippine Energy Plan. Okay, so the electricity industry in the Philippines is undergoing a great transformation, with the impact of climate change being felt around the world, highlighting the need for energy independence and sustainability, including the energy transition. And the generation mix will now be shifting towards green, clean, and renewable energy. The issues on the intermittency of renewable energy technologies and the cost, because that was the main issue before here in the Philippines, have been greatly addressed as we see them reaching grid parity and innovative technologies coming out now to address the variability. So the need to undergo energy transition is further highlighted with the high and volatile prices of electricity that we experienced recently due to rising coal prices. Moreover, there is a huge potential of addressing supply adequacy through demand-side participation. So given all this, the electricity industry in the Philippines should learn how to cope, to adapt, and to transform. And in order to, our objective really is to enable real customer choice, or what we call the energy democracy. So we at the ERC has been very serious in providing the level playing field for the energy transition, and we are pursuing now two parallel tracks, to encourage additional supply and at the same time manage the demand. Okay. On increasing the supply, to encourage the early entry of emerging RE, and as mandated in the RE Act, the ERC implemented the feed-in tariff program. A total of 1,358.962 megawatts of capacity came under this program, 32% of which is solar, 28% is wind, 25% biomass, and 15% run-of-river hydro. Aside from the FIT, the ERC has continued to resolve power supply agreements for renewable energy, and we have likewise supported the Department of Energy in the Green Energy Auction Program through setting the Green Energy Auction Reserve prices, or what they call the price cap. The DOE in the first round of auction awarded a total of 1,966.93 megawatts out of the 2,000 megawatt target. And for this second round, the DOE is targeting an additional capacity of 11,600 megawatts for the period 2024 to 2026. And just recently, the DOE issued the list of qualified bidders for the second round of auction, totaling 118 bidders for a total of 339 potential bids. So in tandem with lowering of the prices of these technologies in the world market, the programs I have mentioned have eased their entry. So we see more supply coming under the Renewable Portfolio Standards mandate and the setting up of the renewable energy market as the participants source a portion of their supply from renewable energy. However, as we build the supply of renewable energy in the country, one very critical question comes to mind. Is the grid ready for it? On the demand side, while the additional supply in the grid is sought, parallel programs on the demand side is being implemented. The demand side is where there was a drastic change in the electricity landscape since 2013 when we first implemented the net metering program. From the one-way flow of electricity as we know it to a two-way flow of electricity. And this marked the empowering of the consumers to becoming prosumers with the ability to produce electricity for their own use and for selling to the grid their excess. So as I mentioned, it started in 2013, and we have actually amended the rules to remove administrative barriers and streamline the procedures. As of May 31, 2023, there's only a total of 8,238 customers under the program with a total rated capacity of 69,148 kilowatt peak. And that just last year, we promulgated the Green Energy Option Program. This is another program under the RE law. This again is empowerment of consumers as it gives the consumers the option to choose renewable energy as their source of supply. Now, since this was only implemented last year, as of May 15, 2023, there are a total of 232 customers under the program with a total peak demand of 76,208 kilowatt. We likewise promulgated the Distributed Energy Resources Rules. And this is very new, and we hope that a lot of DER facilities will be coming up. So all these together with the energy efficiency program of the DOE are tools to manage the demand level so that not all will be taken from the supply. With enough supply in the grid and a healthy supply margin, we see prices will go down and there will be a healthy competition. Then the ERC will be able to reach the twin goal of encouraging clean and renewable energy and at the same time ensuring reasonable cost of electricity. But again, on the demand side, is the distribution grid ready to take in all the additional capacities? In short, the goal of energy transition can only be achieved through industry transformation from a conventional scenario where we have been used to for a very long time to an emerging scenario where consumers play a critical role. And I hope that in the discussion today, we will be able to address the challenges and discuss the issues related to such transformation. As I said earlier, the electricity industry in the Philippines should learn how to cope, adapt, and transform in order to achieve our goal. So thank you and good afternoon to everyone.
Thank you, Sharon. Next is Damitha, who's going to talk about something that actually Mark kind of teed up in terms of the integrated planning for renewable energy and grid system transformation.
Good afternoon. I will talk about the policy, regulation and financing in regard to Sri Lanka electricity industry. As you all know, Sri Lanka is an island in the Indian Ocean, very close to the southern tip of India. And we have an installed capacity of 4,500 megawatts roughly, and a maximum demand of 2,500 megawatts. And even though it is very small compared to some of the countries in the region such as India and Bangladesh, the energy mix, we have more than 50% of energy produced from the renewable energy, mainly from main hydros, wind, solar, and little bit of biomass, and also mini hydros. So we are moving towards a more cleaner, greener energy mix. And the structure of the sector is that it is dominated by the state-owned utility, Ceylon Electricity Board, which owns more than 50% of the generation and the entire transmission and about 80% of the distribution. And the government is currently going ahead with a reform agenda to introduce more competitive, more efficient, more investor-friendly structure into the sector. And also the two governments, India and Sri Lanka governments, are talking about an interconnection between two countries, HVDC interconnection. And if I come back to policy, Sri Lanka policy regarding the renewable energy is very clear. It's 70% renewable energy by 2030. And also it is coupled with another target, that is carbon neutrality by 2050. When you take both targets together, the second one, together achieving both will be very, very complex. If you get 70% by 2030, and when you couple it with carbon neutrality by 2050, that will drive up the energy requirements through renewable energy in future. So achieving those targets will be a challenge. And also that shows that we need to go for integrated planning process, little different to what we are currently adopting. And as far as the country is concerned, the Utility Ceylon Electricity Board has prepared the plans for achieving 70% renewable energy by 2030. And the next question is, how do we regulate tomorrow's grid with these new developments? And what are the biggest regulatory challenges? And there are discussions, I think, in most of the countries that whether regulation is failing to keep the pace with the changing environment in the energy sector. So one of the main challenges we face today is in achieving these targets is the integration of renewable energy, distributed energy, and storage, and also assuring adequate grid infrastructure. How do we assure grid infrastructure for this development, and also addressing the long and short-term stability issues of the grid? So all those are regulatory issues. And also when you move from 50% to 70% with an eye on carbon neutrality by 2050, we need to ensure adequate return for the investors to come in, because the demand for electricity will be should grow at a very high rate if we go for carbon neutrality. So it's a discussion currently also going on in Sri Lanka. How do we provide adequate returns and still keep the prices of electricity at an affordable rate? And also with this, the inclusiveness of all stakeholders in this whole process is a question. So there are so many stakeholders in the sector, not only electricity sector. When you go for carbon neutrality, the stakeholders are wide and far apart. So we have to get everybody included in this process. And as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, renewable energy plans are done up to 2030, may need to enhance those further considering the 2050 carbon neutrality target. And also we need to broad base the stakeholder participation in decision-making process, the regulatory decision-making process, in order to achieve these targets in time to come. And I will come into the India-Sri Lanka interconnection. That also helps to achieve these targets and also to reduce the energy prices. When you look at the international trade, the interconnection from our side, from the Sri Lanka side, we have many regulatory challenges, from issuing of trading license to provide open access for transmission and distribution networks, coordinated system operation, most importantly, clearing and settlement of energy, and taxes and duties, and also how to resolve disputes. All those things needs to be finalized before we go into this international trade with India and other countries. But those discussions are seriously on at the present time. And if you look at the financing requirements, the plans prepared by the utility require about $1.5 to $2 billion over the next 6 years to achieve the 70% target. So in the reform process also, transmission is to remain as a government-owned monopoly. So the investment of this $1.5 to $2 billion in a time span of 6 years is a challenge. And the role of multilateral agencies such as ADB and World Bank and other agencies is very, very important. We have to look at new ways of financing these transmission investments in time to come. And this investment should come in quickly. It has to be on ground from next year at least for the next 6 years to invest $1.5 to $2 billion over a period of 6 years. And the transmission recovery, investment recovery can be done through the electricity tariffs. We have an incentive-based multi-year tariff mechanism where the cost can be integrated into the tariff mechanism to recover the cost. So it summarizes my presentation. The most critical issue right now is financing the grid expansion and absorption of renewable energy into the grid. Mostly the generation part, private sector investment can come in, but when you look at the grid, it's mostly government owned. And financing that would be a challenge for Sri Lanka. That's where we need innovative financial solutions, and a big role can be played by the multilateral donor agencies in achieving the policy targets, which are very clear in Sri Lanka. And I hope those will be kept for the next so many years until they are achieved. Thank you.
Thank you, Damita. And I think he's teed it up for a good segue to Lei Zhang in terms of, the details, the deep dive. Show me the money and what the financing solutions really are. Lei, why don't you come up and share the deep dive and what ADB has gathered in terms of information with the group, because it is all about the money.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me start my presentation. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Seems- Okay. Fine. So I've been time. Okay. I will just brief about cover 5 items. First is basically the energy sector's contribution to the global greenhouse gas emission, and also ADB's climate financing in energy sector. ADB's then just briefly introduce ADB's first finance on this high temperature low semiconductors projects in Nepal and Bangladesh. Then highlight ADB's validation from ADB, and at last I'll just show a video which is one transmission line project in Bangladesh financed by ADB 2 years ago. Here this shows this energy sector's contribution to the global this greenhouse gas emission. More than 73% coming from energy sector. Others is from agriculture, forestry, and land use, and also waste. So energy sector will play a key role to basically for this low carbon development, also to combat this climate change. We also see this as as an opportunity, because currently the renewable energy price is like solar PV and wind power has been reduced significantly, which is even lower than the conventional energy such as coal. And also there are quite a few this emerging new and innovative low carbon energy technologies such as green hydrogen and CCUS. I think many you have seen some presentations in other seminars, in the other sessions. So far, the current global community has a quite strong commitment to the to reduce this CO2 GHG emission, such as many countries have submitted this NDC to the UNFCCC in the updated version, and also many countries have set up this long-term low carbon development greenhouse gas emission strategy targeting carbon neutrality by 2050 or 2060. ADB actually issued a new energy policy in 2021 to support the low carbon transition in Asia and the Pacific. This policy prioritizes energy efficiency, renewable energy storage, decarbonization, and electricity transmission, distribution, expansion, and upgrade. Also promote the use of smart, digital, innovative, and the best available technologies. The ADB, the president has made a commitment, which actually is very ambitious, that to provide $100 billion finance from ADB's own resources covering 2019 to 2030. This means 75% of our operations should support this climate action, including mitigation and adaptation. Here it shows this in the past 10 years, ADB's financing, ADB loan amount, and ADB's climate finance, also energy sector portfolio, including the climate finance from the energy sector. Roughly, actually, if you achieve this $100 billion cumulative amount by 2030, each year ADB's climate finance should be over $10 billion. So far, ADB's portfolio every year is 20 billion. So at least 50% from ADB loan should be climate finance. However, in the past few years, if you see this graph, that only around $6 to $7 billion are climate finance. Energy sector's portfolio is roughly $3 to $5 billion, and only $1 to $2 billion are categorized as climate finance. So we need to really expand the portfolio and also increase the percentage of climate finance. Here it shows in the energy sector, actually the transmission distribution system is a major investment, or more than 60%. So the eligible mitigation activities for transmission distribution system, including below, like renewable energy dedicated transmission distribution system, smart grid system, among others including this HVDC and HTLS systems. Here, just I will not mention the video will show what is the key features and the advantages for the conductor. Here, just to briefly show the first ADB support in this high temperature low side conductor projects in Nepal. Just basically is to evacuate the hydropower through 2 transmission lines along 2 corridors. One is the Galigandi corridor, which is financed by ADB. Another is the Masangdi corridor, is co-financed by EIB. And also there are quite a comprehensive assessment on the voltage and the type of conductor. In the final design is 220 kV ACCC conductor. Here, that project was approved in 2014. This is another support in Bangladesh, reconducting the 132 kV using the new conductor. This is a project approved in 2015. I have just 3.5 minutes left. Just show quickly the video. Finish 10 minutes. Okay.
Don't worry, Lei, because your colleagues here on the panel were efficient. They saved time, so you have additional minutes. So just go for it. Show the video.
Okay.
They were considerate of you.
Okay, thanks.
Western Zone Transmission Grid Expansion Project is ADB's latest endeavor in using advanced technology. Affordable energy to the greater Dhaka area and the western zone of Bangladesh. The Dhaka and Western Zone Transmission Grid Expansion Project is ADB's latest endeavor in using advanced technologies to provide reliable and affordable energy to the greater Dhaka area and the western zone of Bangladesh, following the 2018 approved Southwest Transmission Grid Expansion Project. The Bangladeshi government further requested ADB to finance a $300 million loan from ADB's ordinary capital resources and an additional $200 million from Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. The People's Republic of China's Poverty Reduction and Regional Cooperation Fund will also add a $0.75 million grant. The project aims to modernize the energy infrastructure of the country by using 2 advanced technologies. Firstly, the project will fund the use of advanced conductors called Aluminum Conductor Composite Core, or ACCC, a high-temperature, low-sag HTLS power line conductor. Compared to conventional conductors, such as the Aluminum Conductor Steel Reinforced, the ACSR, these new high-temperature, low-sag conductors reduce thermal sag by being able to operate under much higher temperatures, allowing more electricity to be carried and promising less damage over time, as well as easily meeting clearance requirements between the line and the ground. The high-temperature, low-sag conductors use trapezoidal strands instead of round ones, so they carry more current and enable longer spans between support structures, reducing the need for infrastructure. Compared to the conventional ACSR conductor, the high-temperature, low-sag conductors are lighter and stronger, transfer more power with less energy loss, and lead to significant carbon dioxide emissions reductions. With these conductors, the grid becomes more resilient to extreme weather events like cyclones. These benefits should allow high-temperature, low-sag conductors to remain a leading technology in coming years. The expansion project is a good example of late development advantage for developing countries. Secondly, Bangladesh will now be looking into the use of drone technology to scour the grid network for damage, avoiding power failures that ultimately cost the country a lot of money. Today's drone technologies carry sophisticated recording technology that is able to map out the environment around a power grid, view grids through infrared to assess damage, and are able to record all this data digitally, ensuring thorough accountability of the state of a country's power networks. Deploying drones to survey networks also means power transmissions do not need to be halted for systems reviews. All of this means less damage to the network over time, less time to inspect the lines, and most importantly, manpower can be reallocated away from the physical inspection of power grids, ensuring workforce safety. These technologies address the country's need of its growing economy by operating its power grid efficiently and reliably.
Any final remarks, Lei, before we go to Q&A? Any final remarks on your presentation? Nope, that's it? Okay, good. Okay, now here's the fun part. Let me just reiterate, because we want to have candid discussion, and we did this yesterday. Chatham House rules so that, especially for Sharon, being from the regulator, we can be candid, and what we say here stays in the room, not attributable to any specific person. But I have a question, and this is because this is going to be a tough question for people if you are truly candid. Yeah, we're looking in this session at regulation, policy, and financing solutions being the essential tools in the toolkit to achieve the 21st century transmission system, which includes transmission at the bulk power level and distribution, which many of the speakers preceding and in this panel have addressed distributed energy resources. But are these really key change drivers, or can they also be barriers? And if so, how do we make sure that yin-yang balance is there? And each of these panelists face it from a different perspective. So anybody wants to take on that question first? Let's be honest with, we said these are the success stories, the best case examples, but what are some of the challenges and the barriers that we need to address in terms of regulation, policy, and financing actually accomplishing these things that we want? Sharon, you want to take it first?
Yes, well, actually, the cost of developing the transmission and the distribution grid, of digitalizing it, that's a very big challenge for now. For example, in the Philippines, we have the retail market, and the threshold is at 500 kilowatt. We could not lower it further. We have implemented retail aggregation so that more can participate. However, there is a need to upgrade the meters to be interval meters with communication ports, and that would be expensive for the distribution utilities to buy and deploy in the premises of the consumers. Smart grid, we have wanted, and we have talked about that so many times in the commission. Many years ago, we have started mapping the smart grid roadmap for the Philippine electricity industry. But up to now, we have not really implemented it at a scale that we want. The transmission grid, much as we want to expand it, up to to reach the source of the renewable energy, there is a need to expand the transmission system. But it would entail cost and all those, because it's not, in the case of the Philippines, it's not subsidized. So it has to be passed on to the consumers, so that we need to face the development to be able to mitigate the impact also, or at least manage the impact to the consumers.
I think that's kind of the reality check in the room, is that the path to renewable energy is not necessarily cheaper, and that's why they've kind of juxtapositioning. Well, coal's cheaper, and if you're on the spot market, oil's cheaper. But in the long term, I mean, it is a lot of investment up front, as we said. And so, any of the other panelists want to address that in terms of what could be the challenge and the barriers? And I'm actually going to ask Mark to say, I mean, is transmission investment really necessary? What about another approach to distributed energy resources, microgrids? So, Damita first, and then Mark. I mean,
actually, I think assuring adequate grid infrastructure is key here. Now, but there are a lot of challenges apart from the financing. The implementation of large transmission corridors itself is a huge challenge, especially countries in the South Asia, because that may attract a lot of resistance from the society.
Why resistance, Damitha? I mean,
Because of the land issues and environmental issues and protected area issues. There are so many issues in countries in the South Asia. So that can be a challenge. And even with the transmission network, there should be new technologies coming in order to operate high penetration of variable renewable energy. So those technologies may be new, and those has to be coming with an innovative financial solution. And again, if we do everything, then we have to ensure the short-term and long-term stability of the grid through various ways and means, through regulatory as well as technologically, as well as other implementation ways. So if you look at the entire target of achieving high penetration of renewable energy, will itself provide very difficult challenges to the utilities, to the regulator, and to the public as well. So addressing all these issues needs patience and also expertise in tackling all these issues and taking them together and get the inclusiveness of all the stakeholders into the situation.
okay. Mark, any comments on T or D or both?
Yeah, so I think, yeah, even in Hawaii, I mean, like you said, it's nearly impossible to get high voltage transmission lines built around communities. We had a project fairly short. We tried for 10 years to put it in. It just never happened. But I think, rethinking a little bit, I think, you're going to need GenTies for resources and things. It's hard to get around that. But with the climate change, people are talking about resilience now, right? So there's upgrades going to be needed for resilience, and maybe rethinking a bit about where generation is sited. Looking at Director Sharon's slide, the prosumer, the energy resource development. In Hawaii, we have a requirement, a regulatory requirement, that anytime the utility comes forth with a project that they want to build a distribution line or transmission line, they also need to include a section of discussion of what are the non-wire solutions that you looked at, right? So that it's a requirement. If they don't have,
Can you expound for the audience? What's a non-wire solution?
Non-wire. So, for example, we had a couple. There were on the island of Maui. They had a situation where load was going in a certain area. They were having voltage issues. The proposal initially was build another line next to the existing one to provide more capacity and voltage support. But the commission said, well, where's your non-wires alternative? So they went back and looked at it, and actually it ended up that if they needed a battery maybe for helping us support the renewables, but if they put that battery at the end of that line, that battery could provide the voltage support and during the peak times when they were having the issues. So when they put the battery there, that wire was no longer required. There's another microgrid type solution where they were going to build a line because there's only one line feed in the area and they needed upgrades. So they're going to build a second line so that they could take this line out and work on it and back it up with a second line. But then they looked at it again and said, okay, well, we'll put it out to bid. We'll have a microgrid RFP. If you can provide microgrid for this community, then we don't need to build that line anymore. So that's an RFP that's out on the street now, looking at that alternative. So, and then another one on Molokai where they want to do a central solar, and the utility said, look, we got land next to our existing power plant. There's only one power plant there. And the community said, well, but we got all these lines. It's one power plant on island and distribution lines that are going out. This part of the island has a long line and it's out of power a lot. So why don't you look at other alternatives of siting the generation in areas where it can provide like a microgrid opportunity, right, and provide more resilience? So I think if you're, then we did integrated resource planning development and developed a whole structure on looking at distributed resources and central resources and putting all those resources together into a plan. Now we're looking at, okay, we have all the resource side, so now how do then we fold resiliency and, you know, kind of non-wire solutions also into that plan, so that not only are we getting the renewable energy, but we're also getting the resiliency at the same time.
Great. And Lei, you talked about in your presentation, you know, the fact that there's all this money that's been allocated, but uptake's been slow. And in fact, you know, you need to have more financing of climate change related, you know, projects. And, you know, Mark just alluded to one in terms of, you know, Hawaii has a microgrid services tariff based on resilience to provide resilience, because all of the other island grids on the table here, subject to climate change impacts, whether it's hurricanes, cyclones, in some places in Hawaii, wildfires because of drought, you know, volcanic ash, creating, you know, issues with the transmission lines themselves, affecting the, I mean, I think that happens in the Philippines as well as Hawaii. So why is it that there's, you know, this lack of you said the funding's available? I mean, what are the barriers? Why aren't, you know, countries in the region, why aren't more of the, you know, whether it's the regulators or the stakeholders or industry, why are they not accessing this funding? What is a barrier that we have to address? You know, let's be honest. What do we need to do to get that number up so the funds go where they need to go? Chatham House rules.
I think from ADB, we support our view, my view is different countries have at a different stage. Some countries are facing this like energy access issue. Some countries facing this quality of the electricity. Some is affordability. I think one will be ADB to help the DMCs, developing countries, to work together to address these energy sector issues. Firstly, as mentioned in our new energy policy, we focus on the long-term planning, basically to see, to help develop the long-term, for instance, power sector plan, to including the transmission, distribution, power, source power generation, and also source of fund. ADB's fund, basically, we have the public sector and also the private sector. For the private sector, as mentioned, actually, the renewable energy actually mostly now it has been commercialized for the power generation like solar PV and wind. So we have the PSOD to support it. For the public sector, actually, is focused on this transmission and also the smart grid to increase this grid flexibility to accommodate more renewable energy. As also, this is we are working now. The one side is actually we have the fund, but we lack the really fundable projects. So that is really, we need work together with the DMCs to basically to prepare the really this feasible projects, so that yeah, that is a country programming issue. So.
Yeah, so I mean, what I'm hearing you saying, Lei, is really, you know, and it kind of alludes to the point that Sharon made in terms of, you know, the stakeholders, whether it's utility, the countries, yeah, the regulators, or the customers themselves. There is a responsibility in terms of really coming forward to funders with projects that are feasible, that are doable, that can be implemented, and then therefore the investment will be realized, and it speaks for itself. So it will attract other investments, whether it's the donors, the multilaterals, and the donors, right? I think, you know, I'm taking that away from your remarks, and you know, we're allowing the audience to ask questions. So this is your time, folks. I know there are regulators in the audience. I know there are climate change thought leaders in the room. So Michael, please address the panel with your question.
Thanks for the informative conversation. My name is Mike Jung. I lead the ICF Climate Center, which is a think tank within a consultancy of 9,000 across the world. I was fascinated to hear some of the similarities between the Hawaii history that you showed, Mark, as well as the Philippine journey that you showed. And my question is, do you believe that the journey is necessary? Did you need to have first movers participate through things like a feed-in tariff or the net metering and other mechanisms in order to get to where you are at? Or do you think that those who are following in your footsteps can start kind of at where you are now and experience a comparable level of success? Do you have to suffer to get there, or can you start right away?
Yes, no.
Misery loves company. Why not?
I mean, our hope is no. But yeah, I mean, the time frame where we started, right? We didn't have a solar industry in Hawaii, right? Then the solar costs were higher. So yeah, we did retail NEM. You know, we had the tax credits, so we incentivized the market for a while. But then, you know, now prices have come down, right? There's solar markets there. And we've kind of gone through a lot of the lessons learned on the integration and the planning, and how to do all of that to get it to where, you know, and the regulatory environment. So like Lorraine was saying the other day, you know, we're trying to get all the players rowing in the same direction, right? So we got the government's kind of understanding the utilities, health and welfare is essential because they're the only off taker. Their credit rating is essential, or else nobody will do a PPA with them. So getting all that understanding, and having the regulatory structure to make that happen, having the engineers and everybody figuring out the interconnection requirements, the planning, what kind of modeling you need to do. So we've kind of got all that stuff in place. So what we're trying to do at the university is to come and take those lessons learned out here and say, look, you don't have to start from here and figure all this stuff out, right? We got the standards now. Here's the interconnection requirements. Here's how we do the planning. Here's the modeling. Here's the data sets you're going to need for that. We've actually done some of that modeling for, say, Thailand. We did a transmission model for them. So yeah, I'm hopeful that we can kind of kickstart people. I think a lot of it is a fear of unknown from the utility side. So we also, you know, show where we are. We've got circuits that have 300% of, you know, capacity of solar to load, right? We have a slide that says backfeed is the new normal. It's going to happen. And it's okay. It works. Look, we got, you know, our systems are running.
Yeah, how much a minimum daily load on some of our distribution circuits, Mark? I mean, it was amazing, like 300% of minimum daily load. I mean, before, you know, the engineers would go, no, we're going to have a blackout, not on my watch, right?
I mean, does it happen overnight? No, there's things, you have to have the right grid codes in place. You have to make, you know, certain changes, like we talked about voltage regulators, things, but it's not too difficult. You get into then the thermal limits, and then that's another story. You need upgrades. But up to that point, I mean, you get pretty high levels of things. But hopefully the answer is no. Well, we're trying to make it less of a struggle, I think, in the region.
Sharon, Demita, any comment on that? Like, do the rest of the, you know, colleagues in the room have to suffer, or can they learn from you? And if so, what would you tell them to learn about? The lessons learned from the Philippines and also from Sri Lanka, because you are well along this path, both of you.
Yeah. Well, actually, we always look at other jurisdictions and learn from them. So we get the best practices of the other jurisdictions and take off from there, because we do not want to repeat the mistakes they have made, right? So yeah, the Renewable Energy Act, when it was passed, the feed-in tariff, the RPS, but I think we were the first to mix the two together, the best practices of it and the RPS, but we made it work. So I hope, well, we've been through a lot also in the development of renewable energy. We've achieved a lot and we're still on the way there, but we hope the other jurisdictions will also learn from it, including the implementation of the net metering. We actually looked at Hawaii in the implementation of net metering, but when we first implemented it in 2013, we did not copy the pricing methodology of Hawaii. We were in fact the first one to implement.
We stopped the net metering, you know that, Sharon?
Yes, the full retail net.
Retail net.
Yes, we did not implement it. We have a different pricing methodology for export, which is just the blended generation cost. And I think we were the first there, so I hope.
Demita, any comments on that? Like how you can learn from others and not repeat their mistakes and maybe even innovate and do better as the Philippines did with the net energy metering tariff?
Yeah, actually, Sri Lanka, the scenario is little different. If I may say, we were 100% renewable around mid-1990s. And then the thermal power came into play with the increase of demand. So 2 decades from, let's say, 2000 to 2020, we were dependent on fossil fuels. And fossil fuel share has gone from 0 to 50% during those 2 decades. And with that, we have a lot of issues in stabilizing the prices. Over the last 8 months, the electricity tariffs have gone up by 3 times, from August last year to February this year. Now, there will be another tariff revision up in July. So probably that might not go up as much as that, but that was a great challenge. So stabilizing the prices through renewable energy is a requirement for Sri Lanka. So what we have done was, we had 100%, gone down to 50% now trying to go to 70% in 2030. A little different scenario to most of the other countries.
Any other questions? Now's your opportunity while we have this panel assembled. Can you identify yourself too and then ask your question?
Hi, yes, Grayson Hefner with the USAID Smart Power Program.
Hey, partner.
Hey, I've got a quick question for Sharon. Philippines is one of only 3 countries, only one of 3 ASEAN member states that have both a wholesale power market and a independent or quasi-independent regulator. So I'm curious how those 2 frameworks, those 2 institutions work together to forward the clean energy transition and deal with some of these issues like mobilizing finance and bringing in renewable energy.
Well, the setting up of the wholesale and the retail market has worked out quite well in the Philippines. So we have even shifted from a 15-minute interval just recently to a 5-minute interval and very close to real time, so that it fueled competition in the market. And well, we still have price mitigating measures in place because we are very conservative, as we say it. The regulator is very conservative, and we are just trying to protect the consumers. But we hope that sooner or later we can graduate from that. But it's very close to real time. The retail competition and open access market is also a very robust market right now. We have a lot of contestable customers already, and we have started retail aggregation so that more customers who do not meet the 500 kilowatt threshold can join. And well, the goal really is for the ARCOA to reach the household level. That's the end goal of the IPIRA, for all customers to shift as a contestable customer who can choose the retail electricity suppliers. So we hope to graduate from being captive customers. But it has worked well with us. And we have a lot of benefits gained from the retail market.
Dan, question? Oh, there's a gentleman back there in a purple shirt. Question?
Hi, I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about...
Can you identify yourself?
Hi, my
so
name
the stakeholders know who you are.
My name is Kabir Malik. I'm with the World Bank. Can you talk a little bit about the role of time of use tariffs to facilitate the energy transition? I believe Hawaii has recently approved a first of its kind tariff design, first for the US. A little bit about what the considerations and challenges are in implementing that.
Yeah, let me address that as the former regulator. I think that's really important. It's all about the tariffs to drive the market. In fact, Damita and I were having this conversation with a colleague from Bhutan outside during the coffee break. You know, if you don't have the right tariffs, that's the key role of the regulator, is the tariff. Setting the right price and the rates to facilitate the market so competition can come in, so customers, prosumers that Sharon referred to can play their part also in supporting the grid and providing ancillary services to the grid. So we have large-scale utility things and we have distributed energy resources, and everybody has a role to play. For the individual customer, though, now with the technology and the smart grid technology that's available, time of use rates are so important to shift load to the right time, because when you have excess solar during the midday and to then shift load to another pricing when you have excess wind at night, when there's no demand, right? But there's a lot of supply of wind or there's a lot of excess oversupply of solar. There are creative time of use rates. Then basically, unlike California, Hawaii didn't do 21 different time of use rates. We kept it simple, KISS. We have, the cheapest rate, which is the non-peak rate, which is from the morning to probably early afternoon, because in our case where we are geographically, right? I mean, the load doesn't necessarily follow the sun is, and so the sun will set before, before we actually get a lot of load, because people come home from work, sun is set, they wash, they cook, they bathe, they charge their EVs, right? Not a good usage of the grid then. So we have the peak time, which is then starts about, I think about 5 o'clock, goes to about 8. And then we have a lesser rate, which is kind of, not a peak, but a lesser rate that isn't as, we want to incent the people to go to solar. So the cheapest rate is when there's oversupply of solar, given the abundance of solar resources that we have on the grid. And so that is, again, a very conscious, designed time of use rate. And a lot of people, people can do things at night when we have excess wind, or when there's storage with Hawaii. There's a customer storage, grid supply plus storage, where the utilities incented customers to put behind the meter storage power walls onto their house, with the agreement to let that be participating in demand side management. So when the utility needs to call on you for storage, but how those systems work is at night when there's no solar, your battery will discharge. I know because I have one. Your battery will discharge into your house for your usage. So you're not pulling onto the grid at the peak time, and you're not. And if they need you for some reason, some plant goes out, they can call upon basically a lot of distributed resources as well. That's the goal. But the basic time of use rates and the prosumer, the customer, drives that. So it is really important for the regulator to set the right tariffs. That is a key role for a regulator. Any other questions? Siwa in the back. I'm sorry. Can you get him a microphone, because he has a foot injury. Siwa, you want to identify yourself so people know who you are?
Just. Yeah, Talofa. I'm Suwa from the Office of the Regulator, Samoa. Thank you for the nice presentation this afternoon. And my question is, I was trying to cope with you guys mentioned what you call a smart meter. Because at home we have a problem with smart meter at the moment. So can you share your experience with the smart meter implementation now? And my second question is about net billing and net metering. Which one you guys preferring? Thank you very much.
Who wants to take the first question? Who wants to take the second question? All three of you are evenly to, go for it.
I mean, in Hawaii, we've had a long journey also in the smart grid, as Dr. Sharon said. I think one of the hard parts is making that business case then to the regulators, because it's not cheap, and having the right implementation strategy. They said kind of phasing things in and how to do that. I'm not sure what the issues are you're having with your program, but in Hawaii, we first proposed a full rollout of smart meters. The price tag was high, and the benefits. It's kind of hard to make the business case just on not having meter readers and reduce truck rolls, right? So so beyond that, it's more enabling future programs and enabling future renewables. So it's a lot of it will come kind of things. So we kind of pulled back. We said, okay, we're going to implement on a more targeted strategic level. So we're going to implement smart meters in when somebody signs up for a DSM program or some renewable energy program, bellwether meters for conservation voltage reduction, bellwether meters for voltage monitoring. So just a very reduced rollout. But then even with the reduced meter rollout, you still need all the back office software, which again is not cheap. There's all these integration issues. If you know, I'm not an IT guy, but I look at the IT graphs and all the systems and how they need to talk to each other. It's mind-boggling. But all that costs money. But then times have changed. I think technologies has improved. I think communications have become more standardized and more interoperable. So you're not kind of tied into this proprietary communication network. So I think now that with the level of distributed renewals we have on, we've kind of reached the limits to where we're still using models, but we're reaching limits using those models. So now we need the actual data to tell us, are our models conservative or not conservative? You know, where can we take more? So I think the regulators have recognized, looking at this, we're at a point where this is even becoming more valuable now. Right? So now they've approved the implementation of the full rollout of the smart meter program. So we're in the middle of that right now. I think it's going to take a few years to get all the meters out there, but I'm still waiting. I didn't get one yet. I want to log into my portal and see. But anyway.
Damita or Sharon, you want to answer the first question and the second question too? I know we're running on time, and if people want to stay, please stay. I know there might be a cocktail hour or something that you might go to, but there seems to be a lot of interest in what these folks have to say. So if you can stay, we can then allow Sharon and Damita to answer Sua's second question as well as the first question that he posed.
Well, I'll actually answer the second question on the net metering and the net billing. When we first implemented in 2013, we knew that very few will be able to access the program because at that time the cost of the PV was quite high. So the objective at first of the pricing methodology, it was designed that way so that those that cannot afford to be a net metering customer and put up solar facility in their roofs will not be unduly burdened by the additional rates that they will be paying. Because if you do the net metering, the price of the export will be the full retail rate. Unlike the net billing that we are actually implementing right now, where the cost of export is the blended generation cost of the distribution utility, so that the impact to the remaining customers will be, there will be no impact. It's neutral because they will just be paying for that kilowatt hour also the same as the rest of the captive customers. So that's the purpose of the net billing.
And also in Hawaii, our average generation rate is high. So so it's actually higher than they actually need. So we actually, for the exported energy, we pay significantly less than our average generation cost.
And in Sri Lanka, actually, we have three different schemes. One is the net metering, and there is a net plus scheme and the total export scheme for rooftop solar. So in one, it's the net metering. The second one is the net billing. You are paid for the difference. But there is a third scheme that on rooftop solar, you can directly sell to the utility, but you don't use it in your premises. And earlier, due to the low prices, the total export was very much popular. But now the prices have gone up. Electricity prices, a lot of people are trying to go for net metering in Sri Lanka.
Any comments on the other thing that he asked about smart meters, Damita? Anything with smart meters in Sri Lanka? Anything you want to add or contribute to the dialogue here?
Yeah, actually the smart metering part came in with the introduction of the rooftop solar, as well as currently we are doing 3 projects, smart metering projects in 3 areas as pilot project. One is done by Lanka Electricity Company, 2, and one by the CEB. So, so those are the first smart metering projects that we are doing at a commercial level, but that will be expanded into more and more smart metering in future.
I think we're at time, so if you want to ask questions of the the clock's been telling us time, but you know, technology. So if you can, you know, catch these folks after we officially conclude, they should be available. They'll probably be available tomorrow. So please feel free to come up. But we want to give them a round of applause. Everybody that's been on the panel, thank you so much. Thank you.
Just to make an official final statement from the organizers, mainly on behalf of ADB's South Asia Energy Division and the Energy Sector Group. Thanks a lot, everyone, who was able to participate on the panel. I think this has been really good. I'm happy. I hope everyone else got something out of this. Thanks a lot for coming. And I don't know what's going on, if there's a reception or not, but maybe there is. Yeah, so yeah, I'm happy to buy you someone a free beer over there if there is such a thing. So thanks again, and we will have presentations going up on the web at some point. So thanks.